Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center is pleased to provide this educational video for families and relatives who take care of one or more loved ones. This virtual event is part of our 6-week caregiver discussion series that we are doing this fall. Today's discussion will be around the family caregiving experience through the eyes of Asian American and Pacific Islander family caregivers. I'm Allison Korrey, and I'll be your host for today's program. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce you to the center. The USC Family Caregiver Support Center serves and supports family caregivers as they navigate through their caregiving journey. The center provides services such as information and referral, support groups, evidence-based trainings, community education, and many, many more things that family caregivers need. We like to think of ourselves as a valuable lifeline and an important resource for family caregivers. Our center is also home to the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center, which is part of the California statewide system of 11 caregiver resource centers. Each Friday from October 1st to the 29th, we will premiere a new discussion panel on our YouTube channel, focusing on different segments of our families and their caregiving community. Each of these discussion panels will focus on family caregivers from diverse backgrounds, talking about how their cultural heritage has shaped who they are as caregivers. For more information on these upcoming events, you can visit the website at the bottom of the screen. We can also invite you to interact with us and our staff during the chat during this program. The staff at our center would love to say hi and respond to your comments. The chat feature is also a great opportunity to talk to other caregivers who may be tuning in and watching the event at the same time. Please note that you must be logged into your YouTube account to submit your comments. Now, let's get the show going. We've invited 3 family caregivers here today to give us insight into the Asian American and Pacific Islander family caregiver experience. This discussion will allow caregivers in this demographic to relate to and learn about others' triumphs and struggles when providing care for a loved one. We will also see how these experiences have changed their lives. They will provide insight on their personal experiences on how families can provide both help and sometimes conflict to them as caregivers. Our guests will reveal how they've grappled with the effects of COVID-19, how faith has had a hand in their caregiving progression, and how to build a resourceful community of friends and family to maintain adequate care. Being AAPI creates unique cultural circumstances that are specific to the community. Tiffany Chan, a family care navigator at the USC Family Caregiver Support Center, will lead the discussion today as our esteemed moderator.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, panelists, to our Asian American and Pacific Islander Family Caregiver panel. First, I would like to start off with a little introduction. So if everyone can please tell me a little bit about who they're caring for and when they kind of had that aha realization moment that you were actually a caregiver. So we can actually start off with Karen, please.
Hi, I'm Karen Chan, and I actually helped my mom take care of my dad. He has Parkinson's disease. He's 86 years old. And when I retired from my job, it turned out that they were going to need a lot more help than my mom could handle on her own. So she's the main caregiver, to pitch in to help her out and do stuff. Do what he needs and take care of him. And I think the first time I realized that I was actually performing caregiver tasks was when I had to take him to his doctor's appointments by myself because COVID restrictions wouldn't let her come with us. And I'm the only driver in the house, so it was up to me to take him. And then so I think it was when I had to help him undress for his exams that I was like, oh, okay, I'm really doing this. This is for real. And I think that was kind of the aha moment for me.
Thank you. And then Lisa?
Hi, my name is Lisa Wu. I am the family caregiver for my mom, who is 86 years old, also has Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. So a couple of years ago, I started helping her with her bank account because she wasn't able to reconcile her bank book to her monthly statements. and she didn't have that much activity. And I thought, oh, maybe it's just the financial stuff. But then last year during the COVID lockdown, I was working from home and I was able to see her 24/7. She lives with me. And I came to the stark realization that she needed a lot more care and feeding from the standpoint of physical care and help with food prep and feeding. So I, it's been gradual over time. I knew it a few years ago, but it was much more drastic last year when I could observe it straight on.
And then Shirley.
Hi, my name is Shirley, and I've been a family caregiver for the last 5 years for my father and mother who were dealing with Parkinson's and dementia. They both became ill at the same time. And unfortunately, my father, January of this year, after he battled COVID, and I continued to care for my mom, who also overcame COVID. And the aha moment for me 5 years ago was rather technical. I was at a doctor's appointment with my parents, and he was asking me what my relation was to them. And I said, well, if they're my parents, I guess I'm their daughter. But it was then that I heard for the first time the term family caregiver. And it was when I realized that I was a family caregiver by definition. And that's been my journey so far.
Thank you. So we're just going to start and just get right into the heart of everything. So COVID-19 has definitely been a challenge for everyone, but I think family caregivers have some unique challenges during this time. So if anyone would like to share, if you can please tell us a little bit about what those challenges have been for you.
I'll start. I think one of the, I should start with my mom is naturally an introvert, and the COVID lockdown wasn't so bad for her from the standpoint of she was okay with staying at home most of the time. And for pretty much the last year and a half, the only time she goes out is to go to doctor's appointments or for PT. Unfortunately, one time during the lockdown last April, she fell inside the house and cut her scalp open, and which required a lot of stitches. So we ended up at the hospital, and I couldn't go in with her because hospitals weren't letting anyone else in. So that was rough. But for the most part, she's been okay staying in. The confusing part for her is when she does go out to go to doctor's appointments, she is not clear on when to wear a mask. And the rules are changing all the time. But at first it was difficult for her to understand why she had to wear a mask and how to wear a mask and when to wear a mask. It's a constant learning process, but the rules are always changing, like I said. So I'm sure it's even more confusing for her.
Thank you. And I think Karen, you also.
Yeah. For the first probably 5 months of the pandemic, we didn't let my dad leave the house at all, except to go to doctor's appointments, or if he wanted to be outside, he could be in our backyard, or we'd take him over to my brother's house and let him walk around in his backyard. But he didn't, he wanted to go to the grocery store with us. He wanted to go to Costco with us. He wanted to go like where my mom and I were going, because He just wanted to get out. And we kept telling him, no, Dad, it's safer for you at home. Because my mom had cautions with the masks and washing our hands constantly and stuff like that. No, we didn't wash the grocery bags. But it took him a long time. And even now, also, like Lisa's mom with the mask, when do I wear it? How do I wear it? You know, he wears it and then it's constantly falling down, but he doesn't notice. So we're constantly picking it back up, putting it on his face, putting his glasses down, you know. And every day he would say, what's the news? Are we open yet? And he was asking us this in June, last June, when things were at their worst. And we're like, no, Dad, it's still bad. You know, we still have to stay home, wear masks, take care of each other, you know. And then he wasn't seeing people. We couldn't go to church. And I think that was the hardest part for him, because that's where a lot of his friends were. And he could see them and hang out with them. But without that, he was definitely noticeably getting depressed as time went on. And so that was hard to deal with. So, you know, as soon as we could, we started getting him out places, you know, sort of taking him for walks and stuff down the street. But yeah, it was challenging because he wanted out, but we couldn't let him out. We couldn't take him with us. And we felt really, really bad about that because we knew that it was affecting him.
Thank you. And then Shirley?
I would say definitely the isolation was very traumatic for my family. To have my parents both hospitalized for COVID for over a month without being able to be next to them because of the hospital restrictions, as Lisa mentioned, we didn't see them for a month and they were isolated from each other. They both had dementia and had difficulty communicating for themselves. And the nurses were so kind to help with FaceTime. So some days in a week, at least to see our parents, but that was only when nurses had the free time or when the iPad was available on that floor in the hospital. So, you know, the isolation was definitely very personal and traumatic for our family of the hospital restrictions. And yeah, I would say that was the toughest part. And even when they came home, they were still isolated because we still weren't able to go out in public. And, you know, it's just very hard to see them at home and not be able to go outside comfortably. And as a caregiver, I rely on being outside for self-care, but during the pandemic, that too was limited.
Right. Thank you. And then also for Asian Americans and Pacific Islander caregivers, there has always been many challenges even before this crisis of COVID. So it may be why the anti-hate movement actually came to the forefront during this pandemic. So can you please tell us a little bit more about how the AAPI community has adapted to finding local resources during this time? Whoever would like to go first.
I think a lot of it is word of mouth. My mom spends hours on the phone with her friends every day, and they're always talking about this and that. And so we personally have fortunately not experienced any hate towards us directly, which is really good. But as far as resources, you know, my mom has all her friends that she talks to, and I have friends. I also have the USC Family Caregivers Resource Center and going to various classes and the support group meetings, and we just talk about what's going on, and just word of mouth mostly.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share?
I'll echo what Karen just said. My family has not personally experienced any anti-Asian hate, or we haven't recognized it if we have experienced it. But for the most part, we're keeping in touch with friends and family, near and far, and just trying to stay tuned to what's going on and where danger might lurk, and how to stay safe. So generally, not only because of the pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, we aren't typically folks who jump into big crowds, and so, not that crowds are the only place where you can get attacked, but it's just, I think statistically probably more dangerous. So we're homebodies.
And then Shirley, if you would also like to share, please.
It so happened I was speaking with my USC family care navigator about some anxieties I was developing watching the news unfold about these hate crimes and violent incidences happening towards Asians throughout the country. And she actually introduced me to the Asian Pacific Counseling and Treatment Centers. I had not heard of them before, but I did connect with them. And I was so proud to hear about that they do for Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in our community, particularly those who have language barriers. So that was such a great resource to learn about in this process.
I've never heard of that. Sorry to jump in. Is that a USC resource?
Different. It's a national agency separate from USC.
Mm-hmm. If you would like, Lisa, I can try to send you the information afterwards.
Great.
Okay. So Asian American and Pacific Islanders are resilient in that we have had to tap into our strengths and support systems to overcome challenges and work through problems. Can anyone share with me some of the strengths and the support systems that you've tapped into as a caregiver? I know that Karen kind of mentioned a little bit about support groups, and and everyone did mention a little bit about how they were trying to keep in touch with family and friends as well.
I'll go first. So I didn't grow up with a lot of elderly people around me, and I don't know anybody else in my friends and family network that has Parkinson's. I do have friends and family friends who have elderly family members with dementia and Alzheimer's. And I've never gotten a lot of details about, well, what exactly does that mean? How do I recognize anything? What am I supposed to do along the way? And so that just started me on a mission to basically ask everyone, whether they be friends, co-workers, literally strangers on the street, strangers at the grocery store. I'll ask anybody for advice or tips on how to manage with the elderly, not just in a COVID situation, but just in general, non-COVID, how do you get through all this? And how do you figure out where all the resources are? And so I've been on this journey for a few years now, and over the years, I've been accumulating resources like USC, like Alzheimer's.org, and each resource leads you to another resource. And friends of mine who are starting to experience similar issues with their own parents have been asking me for my resources. And so I've developed a list that I can email. That just in the last month, I've emailed this list about 5 other people. So it's word of mouth for sure.
Good. And then Shirley, if you would like to share, please.
Sure. I just have to mention, I guess it goes without saying, but the USC Family Caregiver Resource Center is such a wealth of information and such a great resource for family. All the programs, workshops, conferences, the weekly support groups, those have all helped me feel more empowered and more informed about my role as a family caregiver. And also working closely with my family care navigator helps a lot. So I lean on this program very much, and am very grateful that it exists for family caregivers.
For me, unlike Lisa, I actually grew up surrounded by elderly people. But my dad was actually the first one who I knew had Parkinson's. He was diagnosed in 2016. And I retired from my job in 2018 to help my mom take care of him. But having grown up, basically it was in my church where I had grown up there, and so that's where all of the elderly people were that were in my sphere of existence. But there, I learned just sort of, things like how to help them, open the doors for them, how to help them stand up from chairs, that kind of thing. And then I learned about the Family Care Resource Center, the USC Family Care Resource Center, when I was at Kaiser, taking my dad to one of his PT appointments, and there was a flyer about the Calm About classes, and I thought, I think I'm going to try to get some education, because at that point I didn't really consider myself to be a caregiver. I was sort of an assistant caregiver. And so that led me to the center, which led me to a navigator, which led me to the California resource centers. And then my sister-in-law, through her family, because my brother's mother-in-law has Parkinson's and has had severe Parkinson's for like 20 some years. So our two families having Parkinson's in common, they were sending me things for the Parkinson's Foundation, the Parkinson's Movement and Disorders Group, PMD. So there's a lot of resource there for me to look at, and seminars and webinars and videos and books and all kinds of things. So like Lisa, I have developed my own list of resources to send to my friends when they say, oh, I need help with this and that, and I'll tell them, look, here's the thing I've gotten. I've gotten good education and good counseling from these groups, and so check these out. So you learn it, you tell it.
That's good. I'd
like to add one.
Oh, yes, go ahead, please.
So one resource that I recently added to my list is laughter yoga. I don't know if you guys have ever tried laughter yoga. it sounds kind of ridiculous, quite honestly. But a therapist told me about it. And if you go to YouTube, there's a certified laughter yoga coach named Celeste Green, Greene. And she does laughter yoga on the screen. And her whole theory is, this is not a comedian's workshop. It's the intention is to laugh, and you start laughing in a fake way, but your brain doesn't know if you're fake laughing or real laughing, because the laughter releases endorphins and it helps your body, obviously. And so, but what you find is that a few minutes into the laughter yoga, maybe it's like a 20 or 30-minute session, a few minutes in, you actually really genuinely start laughing because it's fun, and you feel good about laughing. So I was shocked that my mom really got into it, because this is not her thing. I didn't think it was her thing, but if you're looking for a little levity in your lives, I would suggest giving it a try.
Also, I guess just another question that's kind of a little bit, but I guess, have you yourself personally, or any of your friends or family members, experienced some difficulty in like the language barrier of trying to find resources for your family?
Not personally. English is my primary language, and the people who talk to me about things like this, English is their primary language. I do know that the resource centers have navigators that speak different languages. And so I actually have referred a couple of my friends on behalf of their parents to go check out what other languages are available to them. But personally, no, I have not experienced a language barrier.
Okay. And then I guess, would anyone else like to share anything before we wrap up a little bit?
I can add a little bit more on the language side. So before COVID, my job is financial planning. And so I love to plan years in advance, kind of weird about that. And before COVID, my mom had actually fallen and broken her hip. And so I was anticipating at some point she's going to have to live in assisted living. And so we went to we toured a few different facilities. I live in the West LA area, and she basically said no to all of them. And she said, they're all Caucasians. And I'm like, yeah, so she's like, but I don't know anybody. And I'm like, yeah, so once you're there, you'll get to know people. And so she decided, no, I don't want to live in a place like that. I need to live in a place where there's more Chinese people. She's originally from China, but she's been in the US for 50 plus years. Her English is very good. But I would say lately her language has been reverting more to Chinese. And so I said, okay, well, let's go visit some Chinese, board and care homes. And she said, oh no, I don't want to live with all those Chinese people. I'm like, well, you're living with all those Chinese people right now. What's the difference? So I think all of it is leading to her not saying that she just wants to stay at home and we're going to have to find a way to make this work. But I think at some point we're not going to have enough capabilities at home to take care of her. So language wise, and I've heard this about other elderly people, that as they get older, they tend to revert to their first language. And I'm definitely seeing that.
Thank you. Shirley, would you like to have any input on that, or?
Oh, sorry, Tiffany, did you ask me a question? I'm
Yeah.
having an interruption in my connectivity, but I didn't have anything to add about language barrier.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. So if no one has anything else to add, I would just like to thank our panelists today for joining us and providing their input. So thank you, everyone, and hope to see you soon in person.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany, for that informative panel. I also want to take a moment to thank our caregiver panelists for responding to our questions honestly and thoroughly. Your courage and willingness to share may have inspired a viewer to see their caregiving journey in an entirely new light. Most importantly, this panel has revealed that no one, not even our caregiver panelists, have everything figured out. We're all just taking this caregiving gig one day at a time. Next, we're joined by Yvonne Quao, who is a family care navigator at the USC Family Caregiver Support Center. She is here today as a community expert in the world of caregiving, helping us to understand some of the cultural specific challenges that AAPI family caregivers can face. Yvonne initially began working with the USC FCSC as an intake resource specialist in 2001 and is presently working as a family care navigator, helping family caregivers through their care journey. Prior to joining the USC FCSC, she worked in skilled nursing, adult daycare, healthcare, care management, home healthcare, and home care. Yvonne's passions for working with her clients comes from her own family caregiving experience. Thank you, Yvonne, for joining us today.
Thank you, Allison.
All right, we have some questions from our community that we would like to ask you. The first one I see is, what are some of the other family caregiving identifiers?
Well, family caregivers usually don't identify when they first start. I mean, they do something very simple for their family member, whether they be their parent or their spouse, but or any other family member. Sometimes it's just perhaps picking up food or on a regular basis during the week, or else medications, taking them to doctor's visits, driving them to different places, perhaps to visit family. So those are some identifiers, but those are the initial identifiers as family caregivers.
Right, and as you mentioned, people may be doing those for family members or friends, but not identifying as a primary caregiver, even though they are. How do family caregivers address dementia, specifically with others in public, especially with not wanting to wear masks and the confusion involved with that?
It is definitely harder with COVID. I mean, I have family caregivers that have said that they've had to figure out plans before they take them out to somewhere. They have plans to perhaps like go to the doctors. If there's a caregiver that they can hire or have another family member or friend come accompany them, they would, because it is definitely harder because they don't understand their family, especially someone with dementia. They don't understand why you need to wear the mask, keep the mask on. I've seen family caregivers actually have, in my own doctor's appointments, observed a family caregiver have a caregiver and their mother was not willing to wear a mask for very long, and so they even had face shield with the face mask, and then the caregiver, while they're waiting, the daughter's waiting in the waiting room until the mom's being called, the caregivers out there with the care receiver, her mom, to actually walk up and down outside of the office so that they don't have to stay there and wait because sometimes it's even hard to even wait. I have one family caregiver, when her husband wakes up and he's not in a very good mood, she has to evaluate whether to proceed on with the doctor's appointment. If he's not in the mood to actually do it and she doesn't have backup, then there's some reconsiderations depending upon
Yvonne,
what the need.
yeah, I think you make a really good point there, which is that it's always good to have a plan A, B, and C, because each day as a caregiver is a new day, especially with someone who has Alzheimer's or dementia. So thank you. That was very helpful. Could you tell us a little bit more about the other services that USC Family Caregiver Support Center does to provide support to family caregivers?
Well, a lot of times as a family care navigator, we actually provide individual consults. So we're there with you throughout the journey of caregiving, through the ups and downs of caregiving and the changes that goes on with caregiving. So we're there to provide that one-on-one, but also, as many of the panelists had mentioned, we actually do support groups in group settings so that you can connect with other family caregivers. And a lot of times family caregivers understand one another more so because they're doing it on a daily basis. They're doing the hands-on care. In addition, we do have education like today, and we do have some limited funding for some respite, and so that's something that is helpful. It goes into providing the family caregiver a break, whether it be someone coming in to help out so that they can get a little bit of a break. And we are there to provide information and resources throughout, no matter if you are connected with a family care navigator.
That's wonderful. And as your journey progresses with any chronic illness, your needs will change. So it's really wonderful that you guys are there for the entire journey. Does the center provide any stress relief for support for the family caregivers?
We're talking about respite, and respite is actually to provide a break for stress relief a lot of the times for family caregivers. And we do have some assistance with that. And then also, as family care navigators, we try to have family caregivers think of ways to take a little time so that they actually focus on themselves, to give themselves a little bit of a break throughout their day, or else at least a week within the week, doing something for them to take care of themselves, because in the long run, they do better. When they're doing better, their care receiver is getting good care and is able to do what they need to do to provide that good care, is to take care of the family caregiver. It's like what they say at the in the airplane. You've got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first if you're in coming with a dependent, so that you can help the other person.
Exactly, or something similar. You can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're drained emotionally, physically, you can't help your loved one in the way that they need. Such a good point. I think we have time for one more question. How would a family caregiver know what are their cultural considerations in helping to find care for their family member?
I would reflect upon where the family care receiver is at, their family member, like what Lisa had been saying, that her mom speaks perfect English, had been in the United States for many, many years and can communicate in English, but because of the dementia, or as as a person age, they have a tendency to go back to their roots, which perhaps is their cultural background, their Chinese, or their language of origin. And the family caregiver needs to gauge whether, if that's something that they need to really consider, whether it be, I would say, the caregiving needs to reflect upon, for instance, the need for like the Chinese food, or need for the food of their origin, and or else faith, if they're Buddhist, or any type of their what they consider as their spirituality and faith at that point in time. So looking at that, and finding family, I would say finding caregivers to come to the home to help, or to be in a facility where there are people that can communicate in the language, and provide that cultural part of the feel of their environment.
Absolutely, because we want our loved ones to feel as comfortable as possible, and that decreases their stress. So that's a very good point, Yvonne. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. That's all the time we have for questions. But once again, thank you to Yvonne for joining us to talk about the different circumstances Asian American and Pacific Islander families experience while caregiving, which we got to learn a little bit about today. And we're so grateful that you joined us today. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
We hoped by joining our discussion, we helped build your understanding about some of the unique cultural challenges Asian American and Pacific Islander family caregivers face. Through the presentations led by our experts, we also hope you've been able to find some additional useful information and advice for your caregiving journey. As I mentioned earlier, today's discussion panel is only the beginning. Each Friday from October 1st to the 29th, we will premiere a new discussion panel on our YouTube channel focused on how our family caregiving community is shaped by distinct cultural values and experiences. Each of these discussion panels will focus on family caregivers from diverse backgrounds, talking about how their cultural heritage has shaped who they are as caregivers. For more information on these upcoming events, you can visit the website address at the bottom of the screen. And I hope you can join us in the coming weeks. No one ever says caregiving is easy. Sometimes all we can do is take it one day at a time. Finding community resources and reaching out for help can assist you in not just surviving, but thriving during your caregiving journey. Family caregivers need support, and our center, the USC Family Caregiver Support Center, is here for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of this event, we are here to help educate, connect you to resources, and support you throughout your caregiving journey. Please be sure to visit us at www.fcsc.usc.edu or visit our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to learn more and connect with our center. This discussion series is being recorded, so you will have it available on our YouTube channel if you want to share or review some of the items you missed while watching. If you came upon this video by chance and you don't know about our center yet, maybe we've sparked your interest a bit with these presentations, so please visit our website to learn more. And better yet, you can sign up for our program right on your website through the yellow CareNav tab on the right-hand side of the page. Family caregivers need support, and our center is here to help you. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like it below. Also, make sure to click on the red subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube channel and be notified every time we post a new educational video for the caregiving community. Before we sign off, I want to put in a special mention for Lisa's Care Connection. When I'm not here as a host on YouTube live streams, I'm managing director at Lisa's Care Connection in Burbank, California. Our organization helps family caregivers cope with Alzheimer's and chronic illness through tips, strategies, and support. You can learn more about Lisa's Care Connection by calling or visiting us on our website using the information at the bottom of your screen. Take good care of yourself, and until next time, just remember that caregivers fight on. Have a great rest of your day.